Live. Cool. Awesome. I think we're here, folks. Hello, hello. Hopefully the tech keeps up. Trying out some new stuff today. Thank you for tuning in. We live in exciting times. If you haven't already, grab a guitar, get it tuned up, grab something to drink. I'm drinking a nice little Wegmans brand vitamin water, keeping my electrolytes up. Good potassium content in this. In just a couple minutes, we'll walk through a warm-up that I'll show you, and then I'll also give you some instruction on some chords today, and show you a chord melody by Wes Montgomery. And if I can figure out how to see comments, I don't know how I'm going to see comments here. But if I can figure out how to do that, then I can interact with you a little bit. I've got it up here. I'm not seeing anything. So if you can hear me and you can see me, I don't know. Let me know. Let me know if I'll see if any of your comments come up here, and if I can watch your comments somehow miraculously bubble up, then yeah. Looks like there's a little thing here for live chat. I wonder if you can do that. This action is turned off for content made for kids. Oh, bummer. So that's a thing. Maybe I shouldn't make this for kids. Kids, you're destroying everything. Cool. Well, some people are texting me right now and letting me know that I can be heard and I can be seen, so that's good. And then I guess I can change that in settings. Let me see if I can change settings on the fly here. Here we go. IT Sapp. Good times, great times. I guess I have to make it so kids can't watch this or something. I don't know. Let's go to my studio here. So yeah. So we'll be starting in just a moment. We'll do a little bit of warm up. I'll walk you through a couple things that I do to warm me up. Maybe we will not do the comments today, but I don't know if it's going to let me do that. So next time, sorry I screwed that up right off the top. Oh well. But I hope you're doing good. All right, let's grab our guitars. Let's do a little bit of kind of self-massage first, right? So like a little bit of like just squeezing the forearms on both arms here. Just kind of get some blood rushing to our muscles. It's always good to do a little bit of massage all the way through the fingers. Also feels good. Hear a little bit of knuckle cracking. cracking. Cool. And then I'm just going to put my guitar down for a second so we can do a couple stretchies. So this is the Stop in the Name of Love stretch, right? So a gentle pull back. Stop in the name of love. I think that was an SNL skit right back in the day where we saw like a step-by-step thing of like how to dance like the Supremes or whatever, and they had like the counting, like stop in the name of love, 7 8 before you break my heart, 7 8, and they were just like really obnoxiously hilarious about the counts. I wonder if I can find that on YouTube after this. I could do a little deep dive on that. Okay, so that's one. So that kind of gets your forearm stretched out a little bit. I also like the one that's kind of like the crossbody. This gets your shoulder. And I have a lot of tension, like from playing guitar, because my hand is always my arm is kind of always cocked like this when you're playing. So there's a lot of tension that's back there. So this kind of like stretches that out back there. And then you do the other arm. Usually like a 10 count, is fine. Cool. Another good one is to kind of do this type of thing, like the yogi thing. And then if you turn your hand outwards, start to feel that stretch a little bit. See if you can turn it down. And then you can turn it in. Yeah. So any other things that you need to do to kind of stretch out, warm up your body before we actually play? You can do that right now. Yeah, I'm gonna just turn this thing off because that's just useless for me. I feel like I'm watching myself on a massive delay here, and that's just obnoxious. Okay, so let's grab the guitars now. As many as you want. You can grab 3 or 4 at a time, doesn't matter. Want to shout out to a couple folks. First off, David Mash, former colleague and hugely influential person at Berkeley, originally from Michigan, like I am. This was his kind of first real guitar that he bought, and he bought this in Michigan. This was made in Michigan, and he thinks around 1966, and had a little misadventure with it. He left it in his car during a cold evening in Michigan, which most are cold even this time of year. I think you guys had some snow yesterday, and it's like April 19th today, or maybe a couple of days ago, because we had it yesterday here in Boston. And he brought it in, and with the nitrocellulose finish that was on it, this was a sunburst paint job. The top coat just immediately just crackled and just kind of was rough and peeling. And so, of course, he took it to a guy and he sanded it all down and just kind of put a nice smooth finish on it. And sanded through a little bit on the back here. So you can actually see the next ply of wood there. And then later he sold it to someone in the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, and that's how I got it. But I didn't know the backstory of it until I did a video for Berkeley many years ago. And David Mash was like a senior VP of technology and all kinds of crazy, awesome stuff. And he was doing some presentation, and he clicked on my video, and he looked up at the presentation. It's like, that's my guitar. And he emailed me, and he's like, hey, you don't know me, but I think you've got my guitar. And he had to sell it in the late 70s because he had like a really bad hand condition, which he later got surgery for and repaired. So he sold it. He didn't like lose it, but he still has like a, kind of an emotional bond with it. I mean, a real connection with the instrument, So I've been its caretaker for the last, I don't know how many years, maybe 15 years or so. So yeah. Anyways, that's the backstory of this 1966 ES335. It's been through a lot, as you can tell. The headstock, I think, probably got dinged up so badly, like they actually sanded it down so it's like really rounded now. I don't know if it's going to zoom in on that. Let me see if I can catch it. But you see how that's like not like the sharp points that the Gibson headstocks usually have. It's kind of a unique thing. Very thin neck, super narrow. This was a very unique set of years at Gibson. Usually their nuts are like a 1 11/16 width, but this one I think is 1 7/16 or something like that. It's pretty small. But it feels great. It's really a beautiful instrument. And Mark Herbert has kind of maintained it for me, who's Pat Metheny's guitar tech, and he kind of brought it back to life. It was in pretty bad shape when I got it from the guys in Money Mighty Boston. But enough of me talking about the history of stupid guitars. Let's play a little bit. This is going to really focus on our weakest finger, our fourth finger here. So what we're going to do is we're going to position ourselves down where our first finger is going to play all the notes on the first fret, second on second, third on third, four on four. And we're going to use alternate picking in the right hand. So what we're going to do, we're going to start off with our fourth finger. We're going to play 4, 3. But then we're going to come back to 4. We're going to play 4, 2. Then we're going to play 4, 1. So evenly it's going to be. So what we're doing is we're getting 4 repetitions on our fourth, or 3 repetitions on our fourth finger for every 1 repetition on our 1, 2, and 3 fingers. And this is just to kind of help us get a little more strength going in our fourth finger over time. If you do this multiple times a week, you'll start to get a little bit more flexibility and strength in your fourth finger. So what we're going to do right now, I'll count us in. We'll do that on every string, starting on the first fret, but leading with 4. Okay, here we go. 1 and 2 and ready and play, and 4, 3, 4, 2, 4, 1 next string, 4, 3, 4, 2, 4, 1 next. All right, so when we get there, we're going to shift up 1 finger. And now we're going to change the pattern. We're going to go 3, 4, 2, 4, 1, 4. The reason I like to change up the pattern is to make sure that my brain is actually engaged and actually thinking about making decisions. We don't ever want to fall into just kind of mindless fingerisms. That's not a great way to approach playing any instrument. It doesn't sound like music. It just sounds like a bunch of patterns. So we'll change it up. So now we're going to descend, going 3, 4, 2, 4, 1, 4. We still get the 3 reps on our fourth finger, but now we're just changing it up. And so there's a little sonic difference too. So let's descend, starting on the second fret, leading with 3. Ready and play. And 3, 4, 2, 4, 1, 4 next. 3, 4, 2, 4, 1, 4. 3, 4, 2, 4, 1, 4. 3, 4, 2, 4, 1, 4. 1 more string. And so then we can move up 1 fret and go back to the original pattern, 4, 3, 4, 2, 4, 1. So let's do that and just see if we can make it all the way up to like our 12th fret, all right? So we'll speed it up a little bit now, so maybe about this fast. 1 and 2, and lead with 4, go. 4, 3, 4, 2, 4, 1. I'm going to flip the pattern in a second. Think ahead. It'll lead with 3. Shift up 1. Three, 4, 2, 4, 1, 4. Flip the pattern. Ready, go. 4, 3, 4, 2, 4, 1. Flip it. Scoot up. All right, so we can take that at a variety of different speeds. You know, the faster and smoother that you can get it, kind of the more fluidity that your hand will start to build there. So, you know, maybe take that into the shed and spend some time with that to get your chops up. And maybe you'll start feeling a little more control with your 4th finger. Cool. Well, let's dive into what I have on tap for today, which is a bunch of chords and a chord melody for you. In the description of this video, there should be a link to a PDF. Usually I sell this transcription on my website, InsideOutGuitar.com. There's a whole transcription section of that website. There are 75 transcriptions that are notated in standard notation and tablature. So I try to be as detail oriented as I can. Some are 99 cents and others I think it tops out at like maybe $3.99 or something. But I try to keep them pretty cheap. So this is one that's on there, and I wanted to give it away for free today for you. So you can download that right now. Because we're going to be working through it. It's called While We're Young by Wes Montgomery, or it's his chord melody of a standard tune called While We're Young. This is from his record, So Much Guitar. And yeah, it's a really simple but very pretty chord melody. I figured it would be not too steep of a climb for us to walk through today. So as you're getting that in front of you, maybe you can have that kind of minimized to one side of your screen so you can see it, or heck, even take a moment to print it out. Doesn't matter. The Earth's going to end in a few weeks anyway, so we can spend a piece of paper on a nice transcription. So why don't I play it while you're kind of getting that dialed up there. I'll give you just a playthrough so you can hear what the piece sounds like. And then I'll break it down for you and we can play it together. And yeah, then I got a couple other things that people submitted in advance that I can talk about. A few people are texting me. I'm getting your text. Thank you, Ben and Aaron, and who else? Chris. So yeah, I do have my phone right here. So if you're friends with me on social media, Instagram, or my Instagram is at Colin Sapp Official. You can message me over there. It'll come through. Don't call me though. Whatever you do right now, it'd be awkward. But yeah. Okay. Oh, thanks, Joe. Hi to Joe too. He wanted to say hi. So I don't know who to. I guess to everybody. Joe says hi. Okay. Cool. Oh, y'all are so sweet. Now your texts are coming in. I feel the love. All right, here's the piece. While we're young. Okay. So yeah, let's talk about what a chord melody is first. I mean, it's kind of in the name. There's a melody to a song. So right, so that's kind of like one of the themes in this song, and then there are kind of chords that you play underneath it to make it sound like you're kind of singing the melody while also accompanying that melody on your instrument. So piano players do this all the time, and guitar players can do it too. So we need to have some chord vocabulary for this. So I figured I'd run through like some pretty standard shapes first. We could talk about kind of some classic voicings, and then when we see them in this transcription, we can recognize how they're being used. Okay, so I'm just going to throw some voicings at us right now. They might have like fancy sounding names, but just because something sounds difficult doesn't mean that it is. Maybe you even thought like that chord melody was like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to play that or whatever. But when you kind of break it down, just because it sounds nice or it might look a certain way, it doesn't necessarily mean it's difficult, right? So we just have to make sure that we're always thinking, first off, you know, whoever originally played it, they're human. So if they can play it, then I can work up my skills to play it. And secondly, just because it sounds really cool doesn't mean that it's really hard. Oftentimes it's pretty simple. So don't be thrown off by the names that I drop here, right? So if I call something a certain term, just kind of say, okay, maybe I don't know what that is, but maybe with a little digging on the internet, you can kind of figure out what that term means. It's not really important how it got its name. It's just good to know its name, so when people talk about it, you can understand what they're saying. So let's start with this idea of drop voicings. All right, so on guitar, there's a certain interval pattern that just works nicer because of the way our instrument's tuned, right? We're tuned in fourths and 1/3. So wider intervals are actually easier for us to play than on piano, where you have to stretch your fingers out to get wider intervals on the piano. So closer intervals are easier to play on the piano, where closer intervals stacked on top of each other on the guitar are kind of harder to play because, well, here's like a half step. You can see it's like 5 frets apart. And then if I was to play like another second above that, I mean, I just can't. I mean, well, okay, maybe I can. But it's really hard. Oh, well, I can't. So, that's like just like 3 fingers in a row on the piano, but it's like us going like. So this idea of a drop voicing is basically the way we arrange notes that are in the chord, but in wider intervals with each other rather than close intervals. So, for example, like a G major 7, which has G, B, D, and F sharp in it, we wouldn't play them in that order on the guitar necessarily. We could play it here, but a more common way to play it on the guitar is to play it with the root, the 5th, the 7th, and the 3rd. So I'm playing those on my top 4 strings right now. So that's my 5th fret, 7th fret, 7th fret, 7th fret. So you can bar that with 1 finger. I kind of cheat and play kind of like a power chord on my middle 2 strings, and then use my 4th finger to bar on the top 2 strings. But however you want to finger it, doesn't matter. So that's a G major 7 as a drop 2. And Wes actually opens the song with that. He just puts it over an E bass note. So that forms an E minor 9 sound. And he goes back to this voicing quite a bit in this song. So that's why I wanted to talk about that first. He also likes some diminished chords, and these diminished 7th chords sound really, really cool. And again, they're on our top 4 strings. So this is a 11th fret, 12th fret, 11th fret, 12th fret that I'm playing 1, 3, 2, 4 fingering wise, starting on my D, G, B, and E. Now you might not already know this about diminished chords. Diminished chords actually repeat every 3 frets. The notes are all the same if you play them 3 frets apart. They're just in a different order. So for example, I'm playing a C sharp, a G, a B flat, and an E. If I move that down 3 frets, now I'm playing the B flat and the bass, E next, G next, and then the C sharp on top. Those are 2 voicings that he uses in this song as well. And he uses them a couple different ways that I'll show you. So those are also drop 2s on your top 4 strings. Later on, he plays drop 3s. And drop 3s, again, it doesn't matter what that comes from. You can look it up. It's not a big deal. Again, it's just a new interval pattern for the notes that we stack. And chances are you've already played these as well. Like, these are very common voicings. They just have expensive names. So let's play our G on our low E string. That's our 3rd fret. Skip the A string altogether. Play the 4th fret of the D, 4th fret of the B, and then the 3rd fret of the, did I say the B? I meant the G. It's a B pitch. And then the 3rd fret of the B string. So that's a G major 7. So again, we played a G major 7 on our top 4 strings as a drop 2. And now we're playing a G major 7 as a drop 3 with the lowest note on the 6th string. So he plays this voicing a couple times in this song, and all of these are transposable, meaning you can move them anywhere. So if you wanted to play, instead of a G major 7th on your top 4 strings as a drop 2, you want to play an F major 7. Of course, you can just move it down, because you just have to find where F is located on your D string, or that's where your root is. You want to make it A major 7, move it up. Same thing with G major 7 down here. G is in the bass on our low E string, so you can move it up to A major 7, B flat major 7, any key you want. It's just like a bar chord, right? You can transpose it very simply by keeping the shape and just being aware of the root of that chord on whichever string you're traveling. Let's make this now a minor 7th. And so to make a G major 7th, a G minor 7th, we simply lower the 7th and lower the 3rd degrees. So the 7th is F sharp, the 3rd is B, so we're going to make that F natural and B flat. And so you can actually accomplish that by playing one finger across your 3rd fret and just plucking the correct strings. So E, skip A, D, G, B, right? Same strings that were involved with the G major 7th are in the G minor 7th. But he doesn't play a G minor 7th, he actually plays an F sharp minor 7, which of course, like we just talked about, if you just move a G minor 7 down 1 fret, you've got F sharp minor 7. So he plays F sharp minor 7th at one point, and then he actually plays F sharp minor 7 sharp 5, which is a beautiful chord. We just take that C sharp, make it C double sharp, we'll call it D for ease. He plays that a couple times. So we're really kind of playing very basic shapes, but he's being clever with them. And that's something that's, I think, a big takeaway from this chord melody, is the fact that, you know, you can know kind of simple chords and still make really, really interesting and beautiful music with them. You don't have to learn a lot of crazy, you know, tension substitution chords to make really pretty songs with, or music with, right? I heard from, I think it was Dave Davidson told me that he had saw some video, or maybe he had a conversation with one of these modern jazz guitar players down in New York, and it always stuck with me. He said, you know, nobody plays like root position drop 2s or drop 3s. If you do, like, you're not really a good jazz guitar player or a good guitar player. And I was like, really? Come on. And so this is like this song, While We're Young, this chord melody is a case study in root position drop 2s and drop 3s. So like, in your face, whoever that was. I don't even remember who said it, and I don't think it'd be fair for me to call them out anyways, because they make more money than I do. So let's start to dig into the actual nitty-gritties here. Now that we've talked about drop 2s and drop 3s, we're going to see those play out quite a bit on this chart here. So let's take it from the top. The first thing to do when learning a piece of music is to identify the form. That way it kind of breaks it down into a pattern that's recognizable. So it's just kind of like looking at a meal, you know, like, you don't want to kind of take the whole plate of food and just try to shove it in your mouth and hope for the best. You know, we always take it one bite at a time. So it's good to kind of take inventory here of what we have. The first line of this chart is all just introductions. So these first 4 bars that is not part of the repeated form. That's just a little introduction he added onto it. So that's good to know, and it's labeled. It says intro there, and then it goes into the theme. So now we're starting to hear the actual song. So you might not even recognize it. Like if you grew up listening to this song, someone else's version of it, you might not recognize it until you actually get to measure 5. Now that 8 bars right there is the A section. That will happen again. We will hear that theme come back. In measure 13 is where he introduces a new theme, the B section. So that was B. Don't worry, we're going to go through all this. We're just looking at the big kind of chunks of the song. After B, A is back. So at measure 21, this is the same theme that we heard in starting in measure 5. Exactly the same. But now he's going to add in a slightly different ending to that first part of the A section, just to keep it interesting. So it's not like literally the same. It doesn't want it to sound like copy and paste, right? Then he continues the A section. This is all the same. Then he kind of changes the ending of this. He does a little walk down to the bass, but it's almost identical to the first A section. So far we have intro, 4 bars, A section, 8 bars, B section, 8 bars, A section, another 8 bars, but he kind of trims off some time in there, so I notated it as 7. We'll just call it 8, but you know it's really 7. And then we go into a brand new section that we haven't heard before, and so of course we have to call that C. So here that starts at measure 28. G major 7, drop 3, G major 7, drop 2. At this point, he could have just ended it. He could have just been like, done. But he put an outro on it. So now, after that C section, we're going to go into like a 3-bar outro. Then he finally ends it there. So it kind of sounds like he went back to the end of the C section to kind of like grab some of the kind of the final cadence there to wrap up the song. So to restate the form of the tune, we have intro, A, B, A, C, outro. And so now when we go to approach this, we realize that we really only have 5 sections to deal with. And so now you can just kind of tackle the intro and get that underneath your belt. then the A section, the B section. You've already got the A section, so really you just kind of have to look for the changes of details in that A section. And then you're on to the C section, and then the outro. So let's start getting through it. How we holding up so far? Take a drink. Stay hydrated. It's a beautiful day here in Boston. I got a bunch of masks from a friend who sent them from California, who got them from a friend in China. So I actually went for a walk today with my mask on, and nobody else was wearing them, so I'm glad I had one on. I hope you're staying safe. Hope you're staying smart. Stay inside for 23.5 hours a day, and maybe get out for a half hour where people aren't going to infect you. Awesome. Cool. Well, let's tackle this intro here. Wes tends to play a lot of open strings, and I think this is one of the characteristics of Wes Montgomery, is that we were talking earlier about, well, we weren't talking earlier, I was talking earlier about the kind of the creativity with simple ideas, and this is a master class in, like, this song is a master class in how to take simple things and just make them absolutely gorgeous. So here we go. Follow along in your notation there if you want, but we start on our 2nd fret, A string, and then open E, and then we go to that G major 7 on our top 4 strings, which form an E minor 9 sound. Keep that low E string ringing while that chord is ringing out, and then he's going to shift up and play the melody on the top string while this note is still ringing out, and then shift up to that diminished chord, that C sharp diminished there, and then you can shift that down 3 frets. So far we have the next chord is a root position, drop 2 again, but starting on our A string, 5th fret. This is a D major 7th chord. This is a very common chord. I remember probably playing it for my first time on 10 Years Gone by Led Zeppelin, off of my favorite Zeppelin record, Physical Graffiti. He uses a major 7th there, and he also uses a diminished 7th, which we'll talk about on our middle 4 strings too. So 10 Years Gone, maybe I'll do another episode where we learn all we'll do like a Jimmy Page episode where I'll just show you like the best of his stuff, because he's got some great stuff. So we got it. The melody is A on top, so that's our 5th fret on our high E string. So from low to high, this chord is 5, 7, 6, 7, 5. Starting on our A string, 5, 7, 6, 7, 5. Now, as you probably know, Wes always used his thumb, so I'm not using a pick today. He simply just drags his thumb across the strings and then uses his thumb to play that melody on top. The next chord is a B minor 7. This is also a drop 2 on your middle 4 strings. 2, 4, 2, 3. So under A string 2, D 4, A, G2. I always call the pitch out because that's an A. G2, and then B3. Then he plays a modified version of that G major 7 that we played at the beginning of the song. So instead of playing 5, 7, 7, 7, he plays 5, 7, 7, 5 with that low E string. Now, in order to mute, to block this A string from ringing when you strum through it with your thumb, I use the tip of my fretting hand first finger just to touch that A string a little bit. So when I play this chord, I can strum through all 6 strings, but only 5 of them are going to ring out. So that is still an E minor chord, but now it is an E minor 11. So it has both the 9 and the 11 on top. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't make you play the song worse if you don't know what it means. So you can just say, yeah, I learned an E minor 11 chord on Sunday. I'm pretty cool. So that's that. Put a name with its face, and you know what it's called. Did you know what I don't know, what a power chord was? Nobody knows what a power chord is. Why do they call it a power chord? We just play it, right? Maybe because it's powerful, Sapp. I don't know. The next chord is a G over an A. This couldn't even be more simplified. It's literally a G triad 3, 2, 1, starting on your D string, 5th fret. And then he plays that G triad over an open bass A string. So the chord symbol looks like G/A. That means that it's a G chord over an A bass note. So a slash chord is where you have a chord over a single note. So G over A. And then he plays this G major 7th that we played earlier, but he now only plays 3 strings of it. So the 5th fret, 7th fret, 7th fret, he does not play the high E string on there, and he plays that over A. So he's playing a G major 7th chord over A right now. That F sharp is in the melody there. And then this is one of my favorite chords of all time. This is an A7 flat 9. He's omitting the 5th here. He's playing A open on the 5th string there. And then the G is with your 4th fret on the D string. That's your 5th fret. 2nd finger on the 3rd fret. It's your B flat. That's the flat 9. And then a C sharp on the B string, 2nd fret with your 1st finger. So he's playing root, flat 7, flat 9, 3rd. It's a great A7 flat 9 sound. He's going to play that later on too. Measure 33. You'll see him sneak that back in. So a lot of these chords that we're learning in the intro, he's kind of prepping us for what he's going to be using later in the tune. So it's good to kind of memorize these. You could loop that intro over and over and over. Try to get a lot of comfort with that and a lot of connections, right? So when we play, you feel like you have like that kind of fluid movement from chord to chord. So let's take a moment to think about that. When we are playing chords in a chord melody, we want to try to have no air between notes, right? So we don't want it to be like choppy sounding. So one thing that I found myself and a lot of my students doing when they first start playing chord melody is they'll kind of play. Right, there's kind of like a pause between each of them. So what you want to do is you want to try to hold that chord as long as you possibly can. Just keep your fingers down on the fretboard and visualize, like literally, like look at the fretboard and look where you're going next. So then when you are actually going from, you can already kind of see where those notes are going to be, where your fingers need to be on your fretboard. You're looking at the new region, so you can transition really quickly and really smoothly into it, so there isn't that gap of time and therefore choppiness. Does that make sense? Cool, you bored? Awesome. No, don't be bored. This is Wes Montgomery. It's pretty mellow, I know, but hey, it's Sunday. And we're drinking vitamin water. Sorry, it's called Aqua Zero. I don't have an endorsement with them, but I do have an endorsement with GHS Strings. I want to give them a shout out. They make the best strings on the planet. They're a Michigan company too. I don't know why there's a Michigan theme. I guess my whole life is Michigan themed. But yeah, check them out. I use the Boomer 10s on all my guitars, and then I use 11s on my acoustics. And yeah, they're just a great, awesome. I've been using them probably for 30 years now. So, and I'm only 23, so it's kind of weird. I don't know, but that's how it goes. Oh, you want to hear some more jokes? Okay, great. Here we go. What's the difference between a guitarist and a savings bond? A savings bond eventually matures and makes money. I bet you laughed at that one. Okay. All right. Let's play this intro together a little slowly but smoothly now that we kind of figured it out. So you can keep your eyes on the page. Don't keep your eyes on your fingers if you can help it, but visualize in your mind. So you're actually kind of like visualizing the fretboard. I see my 2nd fret, 4th fret, 3rd fret right there, and then here's my 5th fret, 7th fret, 6th fret. Right, you can actually kind of, number one, feel it, right? Like there's speed bumps, frets, that you can feel how far you're traveling. But you can also, create a mental map when you're practicing. You don't necessarily need to look at your hands all the time. You can look at the page, or you can look at me, or you can look at whoever else is wanting to be looked at. Okay, here we go. Nice and slow. 1 and 2 and ready and play. Even just like that, it just like kind of melts my heart. I'm like, oh, Wes. All right, so let's move on. Keep practicing that though, so you don't, forget those chords. Those chords are going to be very valuable in a moment. Cool. All right, here we go. We're in the A section now. This is measure 5. He starts with a B minor triad on the D string, 4th fret. This is the 4th fret of your G string, and then the 3rd fret of your B string. Finds a B minor triad, but he puts it over an open A string. So again, produces the actual chord name is D6. When you add up all those notes, it's a D6 over the A. But triadically speaking, that's also a B minor triad. You can think of it in either way. Altogether, it's a B minor 7th and 7th and 3rd inversion, because that's the 7th in the bass. But it doesn't sound that way to me. It sounds like a D major 6. It's 5th in the bass. But who cares? I don't. Moves his first finger down for the melody note C sharp while that A string is still ringing. Again, for continuity in sound, we want to have it so everything sounds connected. This is that G major 7th that was a drop 3. So our first finger's on the 3rd fret of the low E string, skipping the A, moving to the 4th fret on the D string, 4th fret on the G string. But now he does not play the B string because the melody of the song is right. So that B has to be the highest note in the chord. And so if you haven't noticed, in order to play a chord melody, the melody always has to be the highest note that we're hearing, because our ear always hears the highest note as the melody note. So one of the fundamental things, if you're ever constructing your own chord melodies or figuring out someone else's by ear, is that the highest note is always going to be the melody there. So rather than what we learned as the full chord earlier, right? It doesn't sound like the song anymore. So The next chord is that F sharp minor 7 sharp 5 we talked about earlier. I like to play this rather than with like my first finger barred across here. Sometimes I do, I mean. But for this, I'm putting my thumb over the top like Hendrix did. I don't know if Wes did this. I mean, there's not many videos of Wes, and there certainly isn't a video of him playing this. So I don't know, but his thumb oftentimes was kind of hanging out above his fretboard. So that's kind of a thing that I saw Jimi Hendrix first do. You know, I mean, he didn't do it before Wes did it, but I didn't see Wes before I saw Jimi. I saw Jimi. He was the first one I saw do it. So you can play 1, 1, and 3 on the second, third frets of the D, G, and B strings here, while taking your thumb and playing the second fret on the low E string. That's a nice way to play it. But if you want to do the bar version, where you're taking your first finger, pressing down across the second fret of all those strings, hey, whatever, it's cool. It's all good. One advantage of doing that is because, you know, obviously you don't have to use your thumb, and you get a good clamp with the thumb on the back of your fretboard, right? So your thumb should be nice and kind of like square up against the middle of the back of the neck for these bar chords. But one advantage of like doing it with the thumb over the top is that if I accidentally happen to just hit that A string, it kind of ruins that sound. And so I guess this is kind of like my insurance policy of, you know, making sure that I'm only playing those 4 notes and that I don't accidentally play too many notes there with my bar. So if you're very accurate with your picking hand, you can use a thumb for the low string and then 1, 2, 3 for the remaining 3 notes there. But if you want to do like the thumb across there, maybe the thumb on your fretting hand would be better to be employed there. Cool. And then we have an E minor 11 on bar 6. This is the same E minor 11 that you learned earlier. This was the one bar 3 when we played with the 5th fret being the melody on top. Now he's playing it as a half note in measure 6. And then he goes back to that G triad, but he only plays the bottom 2 notes of it first. And then he plays the D after it. So again, it's forming this melody. Notice I'm letting that low E string ring for the whole measure. So it creates, again, a continuous sound. Cool. A13 is the next bar. Next measure. I shouldn't say bar because you might confuse it for the other bar. You don't know how they're spelled. They're spelled differently, but they sound the same. English. Oh, it's the worst. So A13, this is actually a very common voicing too. Remember, we're in the A section here, so all of this is going to come back in just a little while. Once you learn this section, you've got the next A section too. So this A13, this is a very simple to play, but a very effective voicing. Open A string again, 5th fret on the D, 6th fret on the G, 7th fret on the B string. I play it with my 1, 2, and 3 fingers. And then, using that same fingering, I just lift up my 2nd finger, and I have my 1st finger barred across the 5th fret now. So now it's open 5, 5, 7. And that forms what I called an A13 with a sharp 9. Sounds like a Dorian chord too, but I think he's using it as a dominant chord, not as a minor 7 with a tension 13. So this kind of, I think, is actually functioning more as a sharp 9. That's theoretical garbage, and I told you earlier, don't worry about that crap because it's not important. Why do I keep talking about it if it's not important? Because maybe it is important. It's not important. So here's our sharp 9 with a 13. It's basically just voice leading down, right? So the next chord takes these 2 notes again, and the middle note moves down 1 more fret. We have to refinger it, but instead of playing open A, he plays an open E. And this forms a E minor 9 chord. Again, this brilliant, simple, but effective voice leading sound. It's now again to block that A string with my as I'm strumming across it, I use my second finger. The pad of my second finger is kind of pressing the note down on the 5th fret of the D string, but I'm blocking the A string with the tip of my finger. So I'm using that finger in 2 different ways, right? So to produce the note, I'm kind of using more of like the pad of my finger, and then I'm using the tip to block the A string, so I can simply strum only 4 notes, right? So E blocked, 5th fret of the D, 4th fret of the B, G, and then 7th fret of the B. Keep on calling them by their pitches, which is E, G, B, F sharp. I'm confused. Are you confused? I should be confusing you at this point. I'm sure it's so easy to follow. So that's why I provided the PDF. I hope you're using it. Oh man, this would be a disaster if you're like, nah, I got this. There's a lot of information here, so it's easy to kind of like look at the notation and be like, oh, that's what that idiot's talking about. But you know, you do you. I'm gonna do me. Help, I'm almost out of Aqua Zero. Okay. No one lives here but me. Quarantine. All right. So the final chord of this little sequence here is another kind of evolution of this first chord. So again, starting back at the A13 with the 5th fret, 6th fret, 7th fret, 5th fret, 5th fret, 7th fret, 5th fret, 4th fret, 7th fret, going back to our open A string now, 5th fret, 3rd fret, 7th fret. So this is an A13 flat 9, and this is why earlier I thought that this is probably A13 sharp 9, E minor 9, A13 flat 9, right? And you can see how they're related. They sound the same, even in their name, their DNA. So let's play through those 4 bars together right now, starting on measure 5. This is our A section. This is theme above that, as if we didn't know. All right, here we go. 1 and 2 and ready and play, go. Beautiful. Bar 9 is exactly like bar 5. And this is where we start to really see how he repeats ideas. So we've done some heavy lifting already. Now we can start to reap the benefits from that. Bar 9 is exactly like bar 5. So the it's all the same. And it looks like he's going to go to that E minor 11 again, but this time he plays the E minor 9. This was the first chord we played in the intro. So 5, 7, 7, 7 on top. That's a G major 7. Drop 2 on your top 4 strings over the bass note, low, open E. And then he goes back to the triad again. G major, plays 2 notes of it, and then the final note. And then A7 sus4, that's played with open A string, 5th fret on the D, 7th fret on the G, 5th fret on the B string. He plays the melody note one more time on beat 2. Then he turns it into a A7 chord. So he replaces the 4 with the 3rd. And then he replaces the 3rd with a minor 3rd. So it sounds like A minor 7. So that measure sounds like A7 sus4, A7, A minor 7. And notice I'm letting all the notes ring so that way the sound is continuous. Next chord, I've seen this written incorrectly in other places. This is what he actually plays. He's playing an E major triad, but he's playing it in first inversion, kind of like a drop 3, but in triad form, which is kind of brilliant. Kind of looks like an E major 7 in first inversion, but he plays the root on his B string as well. So he's actually playing the root on the D string and the B string. So we have a G sharp, which is our 4th fret on low E, E on the D string, 4th fret on the G string, 5th fret on the B. So that's an E major chord. It sounds like this chord, E, like our campfire E chord, right? But it's a little bit more sophisticated. He was a genius. That's why we study the guy. Cool. And it also kind of voice leads nicely from the previous bar, because the A is traveling down sonically to a G sharp. And so it's a smoother connection rather than just going from like an A chord to an E chord down there. It's too big of a jump to be, kind of really, considered to be smooth. Not that it's bad, but this is just a really slick way of moving into an E chord. So we've got that E triad in first inversion there, and he plays that B again. So he plays it in the middle of the chord first, with the E on top, and then he restrikes it on B2. And then he plays a diminished 7th chord, a C sharp diminished 7th, on the middle 4 strings. Now, we played the C sharp diminished up on our top 4 strings before. This is the same exact chord, but it's going to look a little different down here. So it's on the 4th fret of your A string, 5th fret, 3rd fret, 5th fret. But they sound identical. Compare those to each other. Obviously, they're an octave apart from each other. But he's using the same exact kind of reharmonization technique. He's putting that in where it's smoothest for the context of where the melody is at this current place in the song. So he plays that, and then he reaches down. He has to let this 3rd fret go to play this bass note F sharp, which leads us into the next chord. Gives us a nice cadence, fancy word for musical resolution. But I'm leaving these 3 fingers where they are. That way I still have some continuity of sound. Again, that's a big thing when playing chord melodies. We always want to let our fingers stay as long as they possibly can. Cool. So that was the A section. Let's see if we can play through that whole thing now, starting at measure 5. Ready, go. When we move from that E over G sharp chord, you can actually leave your 4th finger there. And so that way we hear that, again, that kind of ringing out. So that's another thing to consider when you're playing this, is see what fingers can stay in common. Like, don't wipe the slate clean, so to speak, every time you form a new chord. Figure out what fingers you have to move that are essential for moving them in order for you to play the chord. But in the case of like the A13, I'm using a 1-2. That's not true. I told you 1, 2, 3. You could use 1, 2, 4. And then you could use your fourth finger the whole time. Oh man, I should have taught you that. Why wasn't I thinking that? Ah, now I got to start all over. Oh man. All right. Everybody back to the top. No, I'm kidding. Okay. So, yeah. So think about like the fingers that you can keep in common from chord to chord. Even if it's maybe a little unconventional, sometimes it just provides you with a better sounding result. Cool. All right. So we've got 2 out of these sections down. I guess we've only got 3 more to go. We got the B section, we got the C section, and then we got the outro. And the outro is super short. So let's play a B minor 7th bar chord on our 7th fret of our low E string. So B minor 7 looks kind of like a B minor bar chord, but we don't even use, like this is like the first chord of Hotel California. But it's, he uses a capo because he's a total hack, Don Felder. No, he's amazing. But he's not going to, Wes doesn't play the high E string. He lifts up his 4th finger to make it a minor 7th chord. So he plays that F sharp as our melody note. So that's our end point when we strum. And then he makes a melody on the 8th fret and back down to the 7th fret with his 2nd finger. And then he goes to a drop 2 on his middle 4 strings, root position, E dominant 7th. And this is why I think whoever told Dave that if you play root position, drop 2s and drop 3s, then you suck, or whatever he said. I think he's full of garbage. Look at Wes in bar 14. It's a whole note. He even just lets it ring. He's just like, doesn't care. It sounds good. So yeah, don't be afraid of just using simple chords. When he gets to the bar 16 there at the end, the very final bar of the page, he basically just plays a B minor 7th, but puts his 4th finger on the 10th fret of the B string for that melody. He doesn't even change the harmony there. So it's B minor 7th, E7, B minor 7th, B minor 7th still. That's how easy the B section is. Next page, bar 17, he plays the same figure again. So he's played that 3 times in the B section. And the B section's only 8 bars anyways. That's 5 out of the 8. We're almost there. Cool. All right. This is where it gets hard. Ha. That's not really hard. This is an E9 with a 13 on it. Again, doesn't matter what it's called. It just sounds stinking good, right? Good talk theory all day. Let's play guitar. Again, I'm using my 1st finger to block the A string so I can strum with my thumb all the way through there. This is from the D string, 6th fret, 7th fret on the G, 7th fret on the B, 9th fret on the high E string with a low open E. And then he's just going to take that melody with his 4th finger down to the 7th fret. You could also, if you got like some double jointedness, my fingers do not bend backwards at all. I mean, they stay straight as a board. But some people have knuckles that kind of like flex backwards a little bit. And I've seen people do that. And I think Wes had a little bit of that going on. So you could actually play like with your 2nd finger across all of the 7th fret, or your 3rd finger all the way across the 7th fret. You could do that. That's really uncomfortable for me. So I always had to like kind of play with my knuckles bent out and use all 4 fingers. But I've seen people do an E9 chord like that and just use your 4th finger. But you can see how like awkward my fingers are because they don't do that So that's how he accomplished that, one of those 40 ways. And then he goes up to play some really clever diminished chords. We played some diminished chords earlier up on in the same area, up on our top 4 strings. So this is kind of a modified diminished 7th chord here, starting on your 9th fret of your D string, 10th fret of G, 9th fret of your B, and then using your 4th finger on the 12th fret of your high E, and then playing the resolution tone, if you can resolve to a diminished chord. So it's I have my finger ready to go behind it, and I'm barring my first finger this time. Before I played 1, 3, 2, 4, but now I'm playing 1, 2, 1, 3. So I can use my 4th finger to reach up to the 12th fret. If you wanted to play all your diminished chords with 1, 2, 1, 3, no one's going to stop you. No one's going to arrest you. Sometimes I just like playing them with 1, 3, 2, 4. Sometimes I like playing them with 1, 2, 1, 3. Again, versatility. So he does that little move, right? So with his 4th finger down to his 3rd finger, and then he does that same thing that he did earlier. He just moved that whole thing down 3 frets, and he repeats that idea. So the melody sounds like. I think this is the most clever move of the entire piece. I love this. I stole this idea from him. And you could actually take this and you can make melodies in the ascending fashion too, right? You can just take a diminished chord and then add your 4th finger and then move it up 3 frets, add your 4th finger. Or you could descend with the melody kind of like skipping around. Or I screwed that one up. Or maybe I didn't. I don't know. I got lost. There we go. All right, great. Awesome. So then he moves to a minor 7th chord on his middle 4 strings, 7, 5, 7, 5. And I'm going to play that same fingering that I was just playing for that diminished chord, that 1, 2, 1, 3 type of thing. But now I'm just going to shift the 2 and 3. So now I'm playing 2, 1, 3, 1. Right? It looks very similar to this shape from before. And the reason is because I need my 4th finger to play the 7th fret following that. So this might be the trickiest spot of the whole chord melody right here. So just kind of looping that little group of 3 chords from the descending diminished. That might be something just to kind of loop over and over until your hands are getting really comfortable with that. But then he does the same move with this diminished chord. Remember we played a C sharp diminished chord down here earlier. So he now takes that same diminished shape on his middle 4 strings, 9, 10, 8, 10. This is the F sharp diminished 7th chord in bar 19. And he does that same kind of 4th finger melody thing, but he bars his 1st finger on the 8th fret of the B string. And I think I might have made a mistake here in the transcription. I think he literally just shifts from an F sharp diminished 7th to a D sharp diminished 7th. I might have to go back and look at this transcription to see if, in fact, or listen to the recording to see if he does play a D sharp minor 7 flat 5 there. My hunch is that he plays a diminished 7th there. Because that, I mean, he did the same thing up here, right? So why would he all of a sudden change that? It doesn't make sense, but anything's possible. But I'm gonna call an audible here, and I'm gonna say that D sharp minor 7 flat 5 actually has, instead of the C sharp on the G string, I think it's a C natural. So we have that same kind of figure from the top, now on the middle 4. Right? Diminished chords moving in minor thirds. Then he plays A string open, 5th fret D string, 7th fret G, and he resolves it down again. It's like that A7 sus4 sound to the 3rd of A7, and then he plays A9 essentially, or it kind of sounds like it's kind of hinting at an A9 sus4 there, but it's technically only the root, the flat 7 and the 9, so I'm calling it A9. And then he plays the root on his open A again. It's ringing out technically. The flat 9 on the D string, that's his 8th fret, and the 3rd on the G string. So that bar 20 is. Sounds a little bit dissonant when you slow it down like that and let it hang, but it provides a beautiful resolution into the A section, which follows in the next bar. So listen to that resolving back down to where we started. Right? Totally makes sense in that context. So now we're back at the A section. We've already played this starting back in bar 5. The only difference is in the 3rd measure there. He collapses the 3rd and 4th measure from the original A section. He just puts it all into one measure for this one. So he plays that A13 again. And again, I'm going to have you finger it 1, 2, 4, unlike I told you originally at 1, 2, 3, because this time he's going to add in one more note on top of that chord as the 2nd chord in the bar. It's still an A13 on the bottom, but he adds in his 3rd finger on the 6th fret on top, so on the E string there, which creates an A13 with a flat 9 chord. He's going to play something similar to this later on in the C section there. So keep this in mind, or no, actually in the outro is where he plays it. He plays something very similar to this. So this is a 13, down at 13 with a flat 9. Cool. And then we're back to the same theme from earlier. That's all the same, all the same. Same. Now when we get to the C sharp diminished 7th, instead of just going right to the F sharp like he did before, he does a little walk down. 3rd fret to the 2nd fret on his low E string. So what I do is I bar so I can actually play that while the whole chord is ringing. So my 1st finger is barred across that 3rd fret there. So I hear that B flat still ringing. And then I finally move it when I have to. But these fingers stay where they are to, again, continue that chord sound. So that's the 2nd A section. We're on the home stretch now. We go back to this B minor 7th bar chord for the C section. We're in bar 28 right now, right after the fermata. He strums that twice, again, kind of using the F sharp as his melody note. And then he starts to get genius level. Plays a B diminished triad over an open D string. So it's a 1st inversion B diminished 7th. And then he makes the melody, while that chord's ringing down, descend chromatically. And this is a C major triad, 9, 8, 8 over the D, which creates a C triad over D sound. That's a D sus4, D9 sus4 sound. So again, this move is, you can hear how I'm letting the notes ring, just changing the melody note, and then sliding the chord down 1 fret. Super slick. Using the same fingering, he then moves it down to the 4th fret. So now he strums his open A, open D, 5th fret of the G, and then 4th fret of the B string for a D7 flat 9 type of sound. Here's where he plays the full G major 7 drop 3 voicing that we learned at the beginning of the lesson. And then the full G major 7, drop 2 on your top 4 strings, and then picks just the G string in that chord after it. So that measures measure 30. And then here's one of my favorite chords of all time. I use this all the time. This is a great dominant 9 chord sound. So I know a lot of you probably play like a C9 like this, right? That's like the James Brown type of sound. But here's another really beautiful way to do it. C on the E string, skip the A, 8th fret on the D string, 7th fret on the G, 5th fret on the B string. So you get a lot of the same tones, but again, a new arrangement of the notes, a new order of those pitches. The E major chord that he played in first inversion earlier, he now takes that same shape, but just moves it up to F sharp. F sharp being the key, but A sharp is in the bass. It's an F sharp chord over A sharp. So that move is 1, 2, 3, 4. Then he goes back to that B minor shape we talked about earlier in the, where was it? The intro. It was in the second part of the intro is where we played the drop 2, B minor 7. And then here's that straightforward F sharp minor 7. And I am using my first finger to cover all the frets, and I'm using hybrid picking, thumb, 1, 2, 3 to pick the notes that I want, and I'm avoiding that A string altogether there. Then he plays a partial version of that G major 7, drop 3, and then he plays in what looks like the top part of that G major 7, but it's this, by changing the root up to the 4th fret, it's a G sharp minor 7 flat 5. And I love this reharm. This is so awesome. It's gorgeous. And then last line, E minor 7. This is the full version. So we're seeing the G major 7 on the top 4 strings play out. He's adding in the root on the A string, and then of course the low E string is also the root. So it's like the biggest chord of the whole song, because it sounds like we're getting close to the finale, and then he hits that A down at 7 flat 9 again that we learned earlier. This is the open A, 5th fret, 3rd fret, 2nd fret on our middle 4 strings there. That's the C section. He's now in the outro. Here's the outro. That's the same exact chord that he started the A section with. That's that B minor triad over A, which provides a D6 sound. And then that's an A minor 7 sound. It's really just a C triad over A. And then he plays a B major 7, B flat major 7 sound. That's your 3rd fret, 3rd fret, 3rd fret, 5th fret on your top 4 strings over A. So it's really a 7th, 7th in the bass there. So 3rd inversion, B flat major 7. And then that dominant 13 with the flat 9 shape came back. This time it's in the key of A flat. So before we played it with an open A string on our 5th fret. This time we take that whole shape down 1 fret to A flat, bar our first finger across the 4th fret. And again, I'm using 4 fingers to pick the strings, and then my thumb for the bass. And then he actually gives us the final cadence, back to that E minor 9 chord. Then a straightforward E minor 7, just like the B minor 7 we played down here. This is on our 7th fret. And then he adds his 4th finger in for the melody note E, and then 2 strings, open A and the G string on the 7th fret, and then open A and the 6th fret of the G string, and then a spread triad D major open 4 7 for the final resolution. That's the piece. Yeah. What a great chord melody. We're going to play it in a second. So stretch your hands out again. You feel a little bit taxed, stretched out. Ugh. Popeye hands. We're working out today. Oh, yeah. Here's another joke for you. How do you make a guitarist's eyes light up? You shine a flashlight in his ear. Oh, that's like a grandpa joke. That's not even a good one. It's like really stupid. That's why I like it. So why don't we take it from bar 13? So that's the B section, right? And we're going to try to do the whole remaining song, but we'll do it real slow, and then we'll put the whole thing together. All right, here we go. Bar 13. 1 and 2 and ready and go and. Not too bad, right? Manageable. Watch the triplets in the outro, right? Because we kind of lull ourselves into thinking it's going to be like. Right? But it's not. It's 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. So it's a little bit speedier. Also, you might have got tripped up. See that pun there? Tripped up. Oh, come on. You got it. Those eighth notes for the descending diminished things, that might have surprised you. It might have been a little faster than you expected there. So just watch out for bars 18 and 19 when you have those eighth notes. The only time we really see the eighth notes are in the intro and then the B section, and then we see the triplets in the outro there. All right, let's take it from the top. I should check my questions here. Any questions? Yeah, good. No one. Everybody's just like, cool. I like life. I'm gonna check. I have like 70 different things to check. Okay. No questions. No one. Everybody knows everything about what I'm talking about, or you're falling asleep, which is great. That's awesome. Great. I hope you're having a great nap right now. So let's take it from the top. Here we go. A little bit quicker though. 1 and 2 and 3 and play. this out. Dramatic pause. Dramatic pause. Triplets. That's the whole tune. Nice going. Somebody messaged me during that, threw me off for a second, but let's see if it's a question about something. Oh my goodness. Somebody's typing something. All right. Cool, man. Yeah, why don't you throw questions at me right now as we kind of let our hands recover from that. Oh, don't apologize, Aaron. Aaron, I was just kidding, bro. Somebody had actually talked a little bit, asked me in the original post that I made on Facebook about interest in this today, about kind of chord substitutions, and that kind of falls under reharmonization. And there's a lot of ways to reharm something. Wes doesn't do a ton of reharm in this, really. He does a little bit here and there with the diminished chords. So this isn't a really great example of reharmonization techniques. But I don't know how advanced to go with that question, because there's like really simple reharm ideas, and then there's obviously a lot of deeper levels to that as well. But I think probably the starting place, which is probably the obvious place to begin, is to take kind of like the same family of chords and kind of substitute those in place of each other. So, for example, if we're in the key of C major, right? So the diatonic chords of, like, I'll just say seventh chords, right? So C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G dominant 7, A minor 7, B minor 7, flat 5, and then C major 7 again. So you have like the tonic, and then you've got the subdominant, and then you've got the dominant chords, right? Like those are the three families of your diatonic chords of C major, right? So, if a song, let's say, is playing C major like over and over again, that's a tonic chord, and there's two other tonic chords that are diatonic. There's the 3 chord, which is the E minor 7, and then there's the 6 minor 7, A minor 7, right? And so it's a common thing, like we see it all the time. Instead of just always playing like C, like somebody, like the next time around, decides to harmonize it with A minor instead of with C major. So like that's a very common thing to do, to instead of instead of using a 2 chord, they use a 4 chord, because those are both subdominant chords, so you can kind of interchange those. Like that's a really kind of simple but effective way to reharmonize a chord progression. And then probably the next level up from that is modal interchange. So modal interchange is where you borrow from a parallel scale. So a very common way to think about chords to inject in a song is to again look at C major, but then right alongside of it, right underneath it, think of the chords of C minor, right? And so like the 1 chord is no longer C major, the 1 chord is C minor 7, and then the 2 chord is D minor 7 flat 5. And so if I did something like the song Night and Day, the wrong chords to it are D minor 7 flat 5 to G7 to C major 7. So it sounds like it's going to be like a minor 2-5-1, but then it resolves to major. So again, like kind of substituting in the parallel minors diatonic chords. So knowing what the diatonic chords of C minor are would be helpful. So C minor 7, D minor 7 flat 5, E flat major 7, F minor 7, G minor 7. There's a 5 minor 7. It's kind of unusual. A flat major 7, and then B flat dominant 7, so a flat 7 7. And so we see that even in Beatles tunes love the 4 minor. I just love it. I mean, they weren't the first. I think the Everly Brothers were probably before them doing it, but I don't know, like everybody kind of does that in pop music. It's just a very effective sound. So instead of just going like like C to F to C, the Beatles would go C to F minor to C. Like continuing story of Bungalow Bill, right? So right, so they use a 4 minor there. So yeah, so like that's where I'd start with that, and then you can always think about taking the same chord type but just changing the bass note, and that's a whole other world of awesomeness. Maybe we can cover that next time. I'm gonna actually make a note. Triads over bass notes. Boom. Triads over bass notes, that's a great way to, if you explore all the possibilities of that, you find some really cool, interesting chords to sub in there. Question from Aaron. Did Wes improvise the While We're Young chord melody, or did he compose it? My guess is that he composed this. Most chord melodies are composed to a large degree, and you can tell it's composed because he keeps doing the same stuff, right? So like the A section, if it was improvised, he would have probably departed from that concept, but he kept doing it. I mean, almost literally the same every time. So it's a composition, and I think most chord melodies they're kind of worked out in advance. That's a good question. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you for tuning in. It's been a lovely hour and 45 minutes. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Shoot me some comments after I enable them beneath the video, and go over to my Instagram for kind of rando guitar stuff at Colin Sapp Official. Subscribe to my Inside Out Guitar channel here. I'll probably do this every Sunday afternoon. Now that you know kind of what to expect, now you know what to avoid. No, I hope you'll join us next time too. Thanks so much for signing in and tuning in and all that. And hope you got some stuff to work on this week on your guitar. Cool. All right. Take care, folks. Bye.